All right, 7 p.m. We're starting the live stream. We're going to wait a few minutes for our audience to come in. Thanks to our first visitor there, and we're going to wait for a couple more minutes, and we're going to start our conversation. Chicano culture, Chicano identity and culture and purpose. And just FYI, I don't know, can you guys see the comment section right there on the side too? So if, I know some of you, if you're on mobile, you probably might have a hard time seeing it, but there's a little comment section there, and so. But if there's anything juicy, I'll try to bring it up. But if you see anything too, just be mindful that it's there. All right, so we'll go ahead and start now. So thanks to all our visitors. This is Mike Bravo, Quimichipilli, Six on Riders podcast, and there's our first ever community panel, and the topic is Chicano culture, Chicano identity, culture, and purpose. So just a little bit about the channel, the Six on Riders channel. It's based off a website I made about 10, 12, 13, 13, 14 years ago. And it's about indigenous education, practical and native education for, primarily targeted towards Chicano not reconnecting, but I guess recovering or, re-tribalizing. I don't like that word either. Sorry. Just, people who are just, trying to get back into their native roots and understand their culture again. And we just started up doing podcasts recently, about a month ago. So that's a lot of like the general background of it, and the inspiration for today's podcast around Chicano identity, culture, and purpose is that there's a lot of us here. I'm sure we can agree, and then there's been a lot of false notions about and confusions about Chicano identity, Chicano culture, Chicano movement, etc. So we want to just start having these little dialogues to keep people, keep that how I say that what's that a term, internal memory, or that old school memory, connected with our younger generation as well, and you know really keep people fresh on what it really is about, what Chicanismo really is. So just to introduce the panel really quick, and hopefully we could do a prayer after this opening intro. But I want to and I'll do the intro real quick. How I know of you guys, you men and you men and ladies here. So and then you can guys give your own personal intro right after. So again, just want to thank all of you for being here. And one of the main reasons I have y'all here is, you guys are there's a lot of people out there on the internet and just people in the movement, and you are people who we've talked and we've probably even debated at some point, and you're all people who help feed my thoughts and really help me. The term steel sharpens steel, or in this case, jade or obsidian, sharpens jade, right? So you got someone like the dopest minds and people with integrity out here in the movement that I really get inspired from, and appreciate all your hard work. So I just want to thank you for being here. First of all, Ernesto Ayala from La Raza Unidad Party, um, Lupe Carrasco Cardona from she's a does main thing. She's a teacher, but more important, ethnic studies of Raza movement, and Yvette Sochillot, activist, um, community advocate, just up and coming badass. So thank y'all for being here. But we'll start with Ernesto, then go to Lupe, and go to Yvette, and you guys can just kind of give a quick intro about yourself, a little bit about your background, and some of your work. Ernesto.
Yeah, well, thank you, brother. Compañeras. Thank you all for sharing the space. Yeah, Ernesto Ayala from currently the vice chair of the Partido de la Raza Unida, and I grew up in the Chicano movement. Grew up a proud Chicano. my dad, one of the founders of the Raza Unida party here in the San Fernando Valley. And yeah, my family, Chicanos, Mexicanos, and I'm very proud of it. And then raising more Chicanos and Chicanas. Una Chicana y un Chicano.
Thank you, Lupe.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Consuelo. I saw you in the chat, but it doesn't let me participate since I'm on my phone. Thank you also, Mike, for having us here. And it's great company I'm in, so it makes me feel real good to be here today. I'm an educator, 25 years. Also, been a Chicana since the birth. Very proud of that, to have been brought up in a family that I was very aware of my my Chicana identity. So thank you all.
Go ahead, Yvette.
Thank you. Buenas noches, Mike. Thank you so much for having us. Well, my name is Yvette, and I come from Mexico. I was born and raised in a small little pueblo in Hidalgo. Came here when I was 15. So in that regard, I think my journey is a little bit different. But I've come to appreciate so much the Chicano movement for what it's done for our people, not just the political awareness, but the spirituality awakening. And I'm an advocate. I've been doing advocacy work for 9 years. I'm in school again, political science and investigative journalism, trying to become a lawyer and a journalist. And just founded a nonprofit, the Jolly organization, and the project manager for La Raza database, research on police brutality.
Right on. Thank you. Would one of the ladies care to do an opening prayer for us? So as we, a good. I would try to open up anything we do in a good way, and call on the ancestors and all that too. So if any Yvette or Lupe wants to do that, or both of you somehow. Yeah, your mic is there it goes.
Yvette, do you wanna start?
Go ahead, I'll follow you because I always freeze with the prayers.
Okay.
I rather do cantos.
That I know, I do too. Prayer so intimate that sometimes it's hard for me to do it in this way as well. But
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to the Creator for having us here today. Thank you to all of the ancestors behind us. The 7 generations and beyond. And I'm very appreciative of the all of the relations that I have, whether it be my blood relations, or whether it be my family, my bigger relational family that has helped me to stay rooted in the ancestors and in the ways of knowing. And I'm still on this journey. And I know that many of us are on this journey to still continue to learn how to pray the way our ancestors pray. And the movement has been a part of that, and so I'm very happy to be here and to open up the space and bring in all of the ancestors and all of their power that we need more now today than ever. And I think that's a prayer that I have as well, that we all remember that, so that it keeps us together in unity and solidarity, instead of taking us on a path of confusion and individualism. It is our ancestors, and I'm very grateful to them for that teaching that they have given us, for us to be together as a people and to care for our communities. And that is my prayer for all of the children that I have been blessed to educate, and all of the people in this greater community that is my family, is our family, who I hope we can be a part of coming together and um, learning to love ourselves, love our people, our community, and be proud of our ancestors. I hope.
That was beautiful. Um, I just want to add, that we ask for guidance from the ancestors and creator, the energies, all the forces that exist, that we coexist with, that we have the strength, the wisdom, the patience, and the love to continue to walk and restore the balance, um, to keep each other safe, to stand together, and yeah, that we can restore balance on this earth because these times are scary. Oh,
Oh, thank you. All right. So to start off, again, too, for reminding the people who are joining us, a lot of the inspiration for this, our first episode of our first podcast panel is because there's a lot of, false notions and just kind of a lot, just, disparaging understandings of Chicanismo, Chicano identity and culture. And a lot of people out there I see representing on the in social media, there's very, very few who actually are accurate or um, offer anything that's kind of respectable and enough to kind of challenge a lot of the false notions, which we definitely need, especially in a time when I do really feel it's under attack. It's been under attack, indigeneity, Chicanismo, and what is the name, the movement, the identity, or what have you. So to start off, we're going to recap, starting with understanding like what is a Chicano Chicana, obviously for everybody, like they have their very particulars and their details as far as that goes, but but to give a general overview for how we understand what a Chicano Chicana is, and then we'll move on to the origins of the term and then the movement, just kind of recap and make sure we're putting out accurate information out there. So we'll start with you, Ernesto. Like what is a Chicano Chicana to you?
Well, when this conversation comes up, but I always what I like to stress, but is that there's like a million interpretations. What is a Chicano or what is not a Chicano? But what I like to remind the people, verdad, is that Chicano, Chicana, verdad, is the only identifier that has come out of our own people, verdad. That's what I find important, verdad. Because ever since we were colonized and invaded and all that, I mean they continue to label us in a way that's convenient to them, verdad. All these other terms that we never made up, like we never said we're Latinos, we never said we're Hispanic, we never said we're Mexican American. Of course there's our people that say that now because that's what's taught to you, verdad. Pero Chicano came from the people themselves, so to me that's what it is. I mean, it's from the people. It comes from the people. It's like if for example, an individual would say, this is who I am. It's like someone would say, my name is Lupe, or my name is Ernesto, my name is Mike, my name is Yvette, and then someone else tells you, no, it's not. Don't say that. That's divisive. And you say, no, that's my name. That's who I am. That's not being divisive. That's just saying who I am. In this family or whatever. That's the way I see Chicano. Chicano came from us, and it came from our experience, and whatever people might think it means or doesn't mean or all that, the point is that it came from us, that it originates from us. So it should be, I think that point right there should be like one of the main points for that is because again we could argue back and forth and all that, but Chicano is this, Chicano is you're born here, Chicano is your parents were born here, or one parent and then part of you was born here, the other part in Mexico, or 1 foot over there, or whatever. People are going to argue about that all day long. But again, I think the point is it came from us. That's what it means to me. It came from us.
Sorry, okay, just to get this. I'm still kind of new to this app, trying to figure out the mic situation. And also too, as we're doing this too, maybe you can just add to okay, well, I guess I kind of covered it too, as like why I think it's important as well. But go ahead, Lupe.
Yeah, I'll add to what Ernesto said. It's something that came from our self determination. Like we ascribe that to ourselves. Additionally, it's really about reclaiming our connection to the land, right? It's reclaiming pride in being of the working class, right? Because before, there was this attempt to sort of downplay that you were of the working class, trying to act as if you were, of the middle class or upper middle class, and in the reclaiming of that word, you're really saying like, I am from my people, whether I was born south of the so-called border, that scar, or I was born here, if I was born here many generations ago, or born either way on Turtle Island from before that scar was there or not. It's a beautiful pride, and it's very, very important that we recognize not just the word but what it represents, because it really is about saying that we are a people of Turtle Island. We have always been here, and we are proud of the fact that our gente has their hands in this beautiful earth, right? That we have worked it, that we have contributed to so many great things. And so yeah, for me, like, that's part of the most important element of what it means to be a Chicana. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not also like Apache, which I am. It doesn't mean that I'm not also, of Mexican descent, Mexican, right? I am that too, right? Just like I'm a teacher, just like I'm Lupe, just like I'm a mom, just like all these different things that I am. But to be Chicana is like so beautiful, because it's like saying, oh, I love who I am, and I have this experience that many of us share together, and even just me, Ernesto, and Yvette, like, we have different experiences, but something in common, and that's something that's really beautiful, that I hope others can also see the beauty of as well.
Sweet, thank you. Yvette?
Thank you. Um, to me, as a I guess like an outsider looking in, uh, Chicano represents a socio-political and spiritual movement. um, that if we really want to put it into context, we're about to witness the kind of environment that Chicano was born out of, in the spirit of resistance, in the spirit of holding on to our roots and identity, in the time where, it wasn't just the anti-Mexican, anti-migrant sentiment, but also anti-indigenous sentiment that was happening with Mexico at the same time. So had it not been for Chicanos holding on to those teachings and the root, the culture, the traditions, the language, so many aspects of our existence, who knows if it would have survived? Because in Mexico, mestizaje was being pushed heavily, heavily. That's from, at least from my end, on actual documents. That's one of the last generations that was documented within the casta system. Even my grandma was my tia, I'm sorry, my tia, she was put down on the birth certificate as Indigena Blanca. And I didn't know what that meant until recently. But, I'll touch on that a little more eh, as we continue the conversation. But yeah, Chicanos to me are the guardians of the teachings, the identity, the cultura. And man, big respect to the Chicanos past, present, and future for holding it down.
Right on. Thank you. Thank you. And just an FYI for the audience too. In the again, too, I don't know how maybe on the panel can see the questions on the side, but just for the visitors and the people watching, we're gonna do a Q&A towards the end too. So as questions come up, feel free to throw them in the thing too. But also just note that at the end we're gonna do a Q&A. So if anything comes up, just FYI on that. But and so next question is, what's the origin as far as we understand it? I know there's different stories on the term Chicano Chicana. I mean, a lot of times, and it's like probably one of the biggest debated things, right? It came from Mexica word, now a word, and you get a lot of people kind of trying to debunk it, and there's various false notions, but ultimately it's all a reference to indigeneity and our roots. But we'll start with Ernesto again. Of how do you understand the origins of the term Chicano and how it came to be, and just some of the power that it has.
Yeah, I mean the old story. You know how it came from Mexica and Mexicano and then Chicano and all that. I did a presentation on this. The oldest reference to Chicano is actually a town in Arizona, um, called Chicana in like some 1500s map. That's the oldest I could find. But other than that, I think I want to like, because I think that's the power behind it, is like what compañera Lupe said right now, but because even from what I've heard, right, like that my great grandpa, like my dad tells me that my great grandpa, he would talk, and he was like a very indigenous man, right, campesino y todo eso, pero when someone would barely come from Mexico over here to San Fernando, and they were working in the fields también, they will call them los Chicanos. They were like, those are the Chicanos, and so it was like a Chicano calling other people Chicanos. But it did refer to that. It referred to being indigenous, to being like the poorest of the poor. And so when people started identifying with that, it came with that pride, just like compañera said. And I think that's the power behind it, man, because that was saying, this is who I am, and there's no shame in that. I am indigenous. I am of the working class. I am poor, and that made people question a lot. Like, okay, I'm indigenous. I'm from the first people. Why am I poor? You know, why can I trace either my ancestors to directly this land, or to Mexico, which was this was part of it, ¿verdad? And that border was not there. That scar was not there. Why can I trace my roots to those people, and I'm on the bottom? That makes no sense. Why am I working so hard in a field or in some cannery, and I'm on the bottom? So that was the power behind it, man. It was like realizing this is who we are right now. But all this group of people, this is who we are. We are Chicanos. We're this new new group of people with ancient roots, ¿verdad? And we're identifying with that. We're proud to be indigenous. And if you see like a lot of the imagery that came in the Chicano movement, it was all indigenous stuff, eagles and indigenous warriors y todo eso. Everybody was like painted, drawn like very dark. It's because it came with that pride, like saying, this is who I am. I'm not ashamed of it. It's not something wrong. I am, quote unquote, indio. I am a native, verdad? And I am of the working class. My hands, our hands have tilled the soil. They have built the cities, and that's something to be proud of. So I see that. I mean, those, from what I understand, are the origins. That's how I always got it. Whenever someone would say they're Chicano, you were like, not walking around with your nose in there like that. You were like down here on earth, ¿verdad? In the barrio, or with the people, ¿verdad? With the raza. So that's always been my understanding of it, ¿verdad? And that's how I've seen it, ¿verdad? Develop.
Perfect. Thank you. Lupe?
Yeah, that's my totally my learning of the origins as well. And ancient people that are connected and have been labeled negatively for their ancestral roots, because as we know, there's always been an attempt like to uh, genetically and culturally like remove indigeneity from our people, because then it gives the colonizer the like equal sort of footing on having control of the land. And so in the movement in the 60s, when people were saying for so long we have been um, made to feel inferior, right? And many of our people have internalized this negative notion of being indígena, and that palabra and that term that has been used, that chicana, chicano, I'm gonna take it, and it's gonna be proud. I'm gonna be proud to use it. I'm gonna call my children that, and I'm gonna ensure that our next generations understand that they are rooted, and it's beautiful. And so the etymology, there, it's been broken down, and there's, like you were saying, there's different ideas, but regardless of what the actual etymology is, um, the perspective and that self-determination that came from reclaiming it is going to be really important, as you mentioned earlier, because we're actually, it was Yvette that mentioned this earlier, we're about to get back into a similar type of climate where our people are going to be um, oppressed and brutalized because they literally need us to not be proud of that indigeneity, because it immediately, that severance gives them this is our land and this is not their land, right? This is the land of our people, and and all of our relations from the north to the south, and Chicano, Chicane, Chicanx, all of that carries that symbolism, that meaning, that sangre, that connection, that raíz, so much. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And Yvette, now, what do you know about the Chicano movement? Yeah. Like, what's your understanding on this question?
Well, same thing, kind of the same origin, that it came from our people, and a kind of like constructed from Nahuatl. But I really like what Lupe just shared with us, because I think at the end of the day, this heavy, I don't even want to say criticism, because there's a way to provide feedback and criticism on outcomes, right? But I think the Chicano identity, the again, everything that it uh covers with the term, it's a reflection of the people, right? It's a reflection of the people coming together under a identity of resistance, that it's autonomy, that we're going to be uh, assert our autonomy over the assimilation. And I feel that as people, whether you grew up connected with your land, or displaced, forcefully displaced, um, whether we know our tribe, or we just know that we have roots to the continent, we have the right to evolve culturally, and that also involves the language. And Chicano, as a I guess, a way to self-identify, that's what it means to me. It means the collective consensus of community at the time to embrace their identity in a way that was not embracing the imposed violent identities from the government. And that's how I've come to understand it. We can get caught up on semantics and definitions, but at the end of the day, that's colonial. If we're getting caught up in the definition by the book, it's colonial. If we're trying to trace it back to the origin of 1500s, well, that's also colonial, because you're denying these people with indigenous based identities the right to self-identify, which is one of the main markers of indigeneity.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Yvette, you don't have empirical data for that. No. But yeah, no, thank you for that. No, that's you guys are right on. I love this. This is great. This is much needed. Trust me. Like, people are just like really hungry for this representation, accurate representation. And again, too, not that we know everything, but we've been around for a while, and we know a lot. And I'm hoping really appreciate people tuning in, and you know recognizing some of the dope people that we have here. So next one is like the origin of the Chicano movement. I think we all kind of touched on that a little bit too. So maybe just like a quick little maybe recap or anything we might have missed as far as like just kind of like the origins and purpose of the movement, and like I guess maybe like a real quick on how like it maybe how it looks today, obviously, because it's not you know it's a little different from how it was in the 60s or 70s. But yeah, just a quick background on how you understand that the movement got started and the intentions over the course of time. Ernesto.
Um, yeah, well, I mean, the what we know as the Chicano movement, or the height of the Chicano movement, ¿verdad? Came about at a point in our history where there was so many contradictions in this society here, ¿verdad? Especially with everything going on around the world, también, it made a lot of people, think like, whoa, what's going on, man? Again, like why you like we were saying earlier, like why am I on the bottom? But this land was taken from us in a war. Why am I denied that I even exist? Why are, why am I being told that, I had to go across the world and fight some other people for my freedom? What does that even mean to me? When, back in those days, you couldn't even, and for Chicanos, for Mexicanos, you couldn't even go to the bathroom next to a white person, or the same. I mean, the same thing. You had that segregation here. I mean, there was sundown towns, and I mean, my tío, my grandpa's brother, he was shot at right here in Silmar, because Silmar used to be, for the settlers, not for the natives, ¿verdad? And he was shot at for being a Chicano, a Mexican, in the wrong part of town, ¿verdad? With a shotgun, and he survived, pero so you had all that, so you had people coming back from these wars that the United States was creating, ¿verdad? At the same time, you had like, well, because those wars were, a lot of them were liberation wars, and a lot of, Chicanos were like, well, wait, man, that person is like me. They're fighting a government that's invaded their country. Well, that sounds like us. Why am I fighting them? So it was all these things happening, where people just, it just didn't make any sense at all. And again, I think we're getting close to that again, verdad? I mean, it doesn't make sense ever, but I think there's comes times where things just, they don't connect that much anymore, and that's when societies start, to break down.
Right.
But that was a part of it, man. And sorry, and part of it, I think what sums up this, what we're talking about, is there's this picture, and I've used it too. I use it for presentations all the time. The picture from the Chicano moratorium, where whoever took this picture, I don't know who took it, ¿verdad? Pero in the middle, like, there's a whole crowd, all the raza marching and all that. In the middle, surrounded by all these other signs, Viva Aztlan, Viva la Raza, our warriors here. In the middle, there's a big old sign that says, as the Indians of all tribes. And so
Yeah.
the Chicano movement created that, and the idea of being Chicano united a very, very diverse group of people, because again, like the compañera said, even right here, we have our own experiences and all that, but something brings us together, and so
Yeah.
that's what this idea created, man.
A quick question too, because I was just trying to review videos and notes, and there's not a lot of stuff on Chicano movement or, well, I mean on the history, stuff like that, but not far as actually like kind of people really breaking it down, plain talk. But like what would you say were like some of the main fronts of the Chicano movements? Because in that video I saw, it mentioned obviously education front, farm workers. I guess I guess the bad treatment in general. Like what we say was I don't know if there was any kind of key defining fronts, not to
Yeah,
limit to those things, but yeah,
yeah.
and then as well as yeah, go ahead.
The way that it's been kind of broken down is like the education, the farm worker, the political, and the land, right? And so definitely the Chicano movement was like when we were just tired, right? Enough is enough. For me as an educator, and my reflections on my role in this movement now, right? That is connected to and appreciative of the movement before, that I think that we should build upon, is that we need to definitely treat the movement, like I saw in the comments, like we need to start thinking about building within ourselves for ourselves, in solidarity with other oppressed peoples, of course, but for us, as opposed to, I think what the mistake was before is we did get more people into college, right? We did get more people, raza, into being educators, but there was a disconnect between like the new way that was still traditional and connected to ancestral knowledge and roots. And so people took their education, they became part of the middle class, right? And they forgot about what the movement was, what the Chicano movement was. And so for me as an educator, that's really important, is for our students to not just strive to become quote unquote educated, right? That's not enough, right? Like they really need to use their education, whether it's formally in an institution or formally outside of the institution at home or however, they need to use their education to free themselves from the chains that this educational system has tied them up with, right? Free themselves from believing that this system is something that is for them, that they need to become a part of, because we see that too much, right? We see raza, Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx youth getting educated, and then they become just like the rest of them. And all that really is just a more colorful system that doesn't work for us, right? It's like, and the perfect example is like, cops. But I also think of like how many of us were on the streets, on the front lines, really fighting for like different types of immigration rights, etc., right? And won some protections, but many of those are relatives. Many of them, they then become part of the system, and then end up supporting the worst of the system. I do believe, Kap Mala was not the answer, absolutely, but it's really disgusting that many people found the answer in the most disgusting of them all, the most vocally anti our people, pro wall, pro mass deportation, and that to me shows that there's been a failure, right? Because the educational system has been too much about teaching, right? Like to play the game and be a part of this game, as opposed to what the movement really was. The movement was about learning who you were, learning about your history and your ancestry, and using that to then become politically engaged and giving back to the community and engaging in that praxis, right? And so that's why for me, like as an educator in this new wave of the Chicano, Chicanx movement, I'm really big on like our students shouldn't just be learning about our heroes, like Ernesto's father, for instance. Yes, they should learn about Ernesto's father and La Raza Unida, but they also need to learn about how to be like Ernesto's father, right? How to be in the community, how to continue the fight. Because otherwise, I'm just teaching, the same way as this system that doesn't work for us, but the kids are just going to be a little bit more woke, quote unquote, right? So yeah, so the I do believe the movement is still alive today, but I think we need to regain that heartbeat and reconnect to that, which was reconnecting to pre Cuauhtemoc days, but in modern times.
That's what's up. Yvette, what's your take and your
Can-
understandings and
do you mind repeating the question one more time?
yeah, sure. So it was basically like the what you understand to be the origins of the Chicano movement, and then
Mhm.
also after Ernesto, I emphasized, kind of like some of the fronts of the movement. We cited the the obviously people coming back from the war being disgruntled by, you know, um, the oppression, and then the farm workers and the education as well as other things. But just your general understanding of what you understand as the origins of the Chicano movement, and maybe somehow the way it's kind of changed or moved on throughout the timeline.
Okay, okay, thank you. Um, and again, I'm gonna share my perspective, right? I think the Chicano movement came as the result of something that was brewing for a long time. Kind of like people finally coming together and taking action. Obviously, that was for our rights, for our humanity, our existence, our dignity. But I think it's been so diluted in a way because there's a lot of appropriation as well, to the point that it's been diluted as a way to identify people by mere nationality and heritage, Mexican American, right? Like that's enough to claim the Chicano way of life, which is a way of life. It's an ideology. It's something that it's practiced every day. It's not just something that you turn on and off like from 8 to 5, just like Monday through Friday, or when you're out there on the streets. No, it's a way of life. It's a way of seeing the world. It's a reflection of the cosmovision in a way. Um, and the other part I think is not. well understood today is the separation between again, the socio-political spiritual movement and Chicano becoming some sort of symbol of Cholo culture, which might be a subculture within the Chicano culture, but they're not the same. And I kind of I can't help but to feel that it's a way of branding people, to reduce you to be this by the same system that try to erase our identities. So again, kind of looking into the context today, it was born out of this. It was born out of the same issues that we are facing today and that we're gonna see come January 2025. It was born out of the need to stand together, to protect each other, to protect the culture, preserve the teachings. And the movement has been aligned with that, including, I mean, the whole thing about gangs being born out of necessity to protect each other and stand together. So for me, the Chicano movement started as a result of all of these things and has evolved from that to now the attempts of being diluted to just being Mexican Americans, or just, people that were here, born in the States, and that look at indigenous people as less than. That is not Chicano identity. That is not Chicano identity. Um, so that's how I've come to understand.
No, thank you. Yeah, that's why I have you on here. you know, I'm because yeah, you come from a little slightly different, a little background, a little bit, So again, to just a reminder too for people who have questions, obviously I know some of the panelists can read the comments too, but some of them like we're gonna address towards the end. But if any of the panelists see comments in there that they want to immediately address, just let me know and feel free to jump in. Cool, cool. So I appreciate that, and also we're going to touch on that topic too later, Yvette, as far as kind of like breaking down some of the common notions or things I've kind of made note of on the online and different podcasts and other commentaries, popular internet personalities or whatever. So this next section is kind of like I'm gonna start with with this list of common notions or things to kind of like clarify or debunk. And again, if anything else comes up along these notes or things, whether people in the people watching or in the panelists, if there's anything else that comes up that you remember that we can kind of clarify that you see as you know more substantial and problematic, whatever, feel free to bring it in. Um, so the first thing is I see this a lot is people say Chicano identity erases indigenous people and identity. So we'll start with Ernesto or on that, or
Um,
and I know you just went through it too. So yeah, but
I think there's so many things when people say stuff like that, and it's a very American thing to say, verdad? Because Chicanos don't erase anything. It's the United States that erases indigenous identity. It's the United States and their educational system that erases indigenous identity. It's that same system that's erased or attempted to erase the Chicano identity. And they constantly have over and over. That's why you always see Chicano studies under attack, ethnic studies under attack, because that's the only places we've been able to express our history, but not teach our history, outside of the few people that teach it in their homes, ¿verdad? Pero Chicano does not erase any of that, brother. I think when people say stuff like that, we have to, you have to understand human history. You have to understand a lot of dynamic stuff like that. Every single identity that exists today didn't always exist. Every single one, even tribal identities, they came about at one point in time, but that they did not exist. There's even this one book I have. It's about the Hopi people, and it says there how the Hopi people themselves, the pueblo, they came about from various different groups that came together at some point in time in history, long time ago. Before that, no, there did not exist as such, right? I mean, obviously the humans existed, but as such, they did not exist. So it's the same thing with Chicano. I mean, we need to, the United States does a good job at like not letting people understand that, you know, being in the United States doesn't stop history, it doesn't stop reality. You know, history keeps happening as the humans keep developing, but then the United States is not eternal. There's going to be, you know, new groups of people that are going to uh, uh, develop, and they're going to challenge the authority of the United States internally. We are one of those, and we are probably the biggest one, because there's millions of us. So Chicano comes about just like, you know, Mexicano came about, just like when all these other identities came about throughout history. They came about, you know, because of new experiences. You know, people were forced to live, or whether naturally or unnaturally, they were forced to live new realities, and they became a new group of people that came from different parts. You know, that's just that's just human history. You know, so Chicano doesn't erase anything. Chicano just names that new reality. We've had, you know, it's the United States has colonized this area, has colonized, you know, what we came to call Aztlan, the Southwest, ¿verdad? And its various indigenous territories, ¿verdad? Came to colonize it because of its war against Mexico. And it started a new reality for the people there. And part of that new reality was also that it needed laborers, more laborers than the few we could have, to come here. So more indigenous people migrated up here, and that new reality created the Chicano. So it's not the Chicano don't erase anything. It's just naming this new reality. This is happening. This new group of people have developed, and that's who they are. They come. They could be, you know, from tribes here, nations here. They could be Mexicanos. They could be born here, or they could not be born here. They could be from Central America, and they're here now. And you have this new reality that has formed. They could be mixed blood people, mixed blood without, like, if we're, you know, dogs or something like that. Pero they could be that, you know, they could be Afro, you know, blood. They could be mixed with even white, you know, they're Filipinos, you know, I've met Filipinos that identify as Chicanos, and who am I to say that they're not? They are, ¿verdad? Because they share this experience with us, ¿verdad? And so it's just naming that, and the powerful thing again from that naming is that naming has come from the people themselves, you know. So Chicano's not erasing anything. It's just, again, it's saying this is this new reality, and it encompasses a whole bunch of people. Again, a very diverse group of people, even more diverse now than it was, you know, back in the 70s and 60s and 70s. I think, but it's just naming it. That's all, you know.
So there was a whole bunch of indigenous peoples on this turtle island, and then colonizers came and brought Spanish, and then other colonizers came and brought English and other languages, and then they carved up this these lands, right? And with carving it up, they also brought ideologies and ways of thinking, and including linguicism. And so a lot of times what I see is people identifying, oh, those are not real indigenous peoples because they speak Spanish, right? Oh, but up there in Canada, those are real indigenous peoples, right? Even though they're speaking English. So I see a lot of times where we're allowing linguicism to further carve up the people, right? And that's really, really bad. And furthermore, a lot of people that say, you know, Chicanos are settler colonists, et cetera, they were not here in the 60s and 70s during the American Indian movement, when people from the South and people from the North were praying together in teepee, in ceremony, in sweat lodge, and in other prayers. And furthermore, they're not knowledgeable on the fact that the peyote, the grandfather peyote, comes from the Wirikuta, which is in Mexico, San Luis Potosí to be exact. And that beautiful medicine and prayer is incorporated into teepees in the Lakota and all across Turtle Island. So those beautiful connections have been formed for generations. And a lot of these woke youngsters, they learn a little bit and they plop these ideas. Oh, settler colonialism, that's my new term. Boom, I'm gonna plop it on, without really going back and looking at the fact that we have been rebuilding these relationships. And my family and you all, right? We can go right now to the Dineta, and they will welcome us as relatives. And if you go to Little Big Medicine, Sundance, they're gonna have a south altar. It's the peyote altar. And in Sundance, it's traditional that you either go barefoot or you wear moccasins, the traditional shoes, or huaraches, because they respect our people's traditional shoes, covering feet coverings. But a lot of these people, they're going to talk all kinds of smack and say that Chicanos are just fake indigenous people and they're just reclaiming something and they're erasing other people. They haven't been in these ceremonies where the tios, the tatas, and the elders are praying together, and sometimes they're praying in our people's indigenous languages, including Dinita, and their Spanish and English become translations to bring the ideas and the prayers together. And furthermore, I also saw in here somewhere about Americans. And I know my hermano here at Ernesto knows this very well. Jack Forbes talks about the word America is not the lie that they say Amerigo Vespucci. It is not a European term. In fact, the logs had him named as Rodrigo Vespucci. Okay, they invented this fake etymology because American had become so like ingrained in people. But America actually is a rooted word that comes from Nicaragua. It's an indigenous word, and it's related to a lot of other words like maraca and other words that we can go on and on. But Jack Forbes, a very powerful native scholar and ancestor now, he was recognizing that our people are indigenous and are relatives to all these other people in this northern part of the scar that we call the border.
Thank you. Yeah, and it just reminded me too. At this, I don't know if there's more, but I learned of a Chicano chief. From I think he's involved, from the Lakota, sweat lodge ways. Not too sure which, family or a lineage, whatever. But there is a Chicano chief within the Lakota Nation somewhere. I forgot the brother's name, and he has a son who's, I think he's the medicine man too. I forgot their names right now. It's been a while, but just as a note, and on just what you're saying about the ceremony. But go ahead, Yvette.
I'm so happy Lupe mentioned the ceremonial part of it. I had already just made a note about that specific part of the conversation because I think it's crucial to understand that.
Mm.
Um, and I think another factor that is not usually taken into consideration is the double colonization that we experienced in the Southwest. That it was not only colonized by the Spaniards, but also by the Anglo people. And there this race for status, but at the same time, the Chicano term once became appropriated to claim ties to the land by the Hispanos. And those are the ones erasing it, the ones that are appropriating these identities and teachings, and that they're like alive and breathing cultures. um and then it's the spiritual part of it, because for me, the fact that the Sundance and other ceremonies have been gifted to Chicanos to kind of, in a way, to guide us to come back home. It's beautiful. There's nothing more beautiful than to be able to go to ceremony with other relatives and learn from them. I love how Grandpa Sid Mills talks about this, the cultural exchange between all of us.
Mm.
And it's true, like the connection among indigenous people, connected or reconnecting, It's not happening online. It's not happening or at the powwows or at the Danza Azteca. It's happening in the close practice ceremonies where we actually get to exchange and engage with one another. And yeah, but I don't believe the authentic Chicano identity erases indigeneity. On the contrary, it uplifts indigenous voices. It's the system that continues to try to impose identities and dilute them. Again, like the Hispanos appropriating Chicanismo to claim ties to the land. That's what erases indigenous people.
Hold on. Sorry, having mic issues real quick. Hold on. Hold on 1 sec.
And part of that, if I could also add is, even in the movimiento, in the movement, in our struggle for liberation, both movements, have worked with each other in the past, and that's part of the history that's never taught. I know on behalf of the partido, the partido was one of the organizations that helped us found the International Indian Treaty Council, and they started. They even had an extension of it called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo Project, because the International Indian Treaty Council recognized Chicanos as indigenous and recognized the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo as one of many treaties that the United States has broken with indigenous people after warring on them. So, and I even I have that letter, I have the physical copy of that letter that was written to my dad when he was the chair of the partido, before I was even born, by Bill Wapepa, who headed, the Indian Treaty Council back then. And that's all this history that we have, and that is never even taught about, where, we've been one and the same, or together, in the struggle to liberate the land. And so, yeah, like we don't learn about our cultural practices. We don't learn about our history, verdad, both pre-invasion, pre-Cuauhtémoc, and now, verdad, of all those ties that we have, verdad, and how, like compañera Ivette said, the Chicano identity uplifts indigenous identities. I've seen it throughout my life how, a lot of brothers and sisters, verdad, when they came to realize that they're Chicanos, it opened the door to them understanding, like, like their tribal origins, if we could say, verdad, and getting in touch with that, verdad. So it helped with that to a lot of people, verdad. And so to say that it's erased indigenous uh, cultures or people is just that's nonsense.
Yeah.
That's colonial nonsense.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry, I was having little mic issues over here. My microphone arm broke. I'm like trying to, refix it over here. So okay. So the next question is okay. Chicanosaurus, Chicano movement is a thing of the past. You see that a lot too. So we'll start with Lupus since Ernesto just went.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to go. I'm out here. I'm freezing. I'm like shivering. So I'm gonna have to go soon. But
Okay.
yeah, no, I mean, it's not a thing of the past. It's always been alive. Maybe not as visible. I think that we have a lot of building to do as a people. Um, I definitely refer to myself as a Chicana, but I also respect others, right? Not to, but I think that whether you call yourself, you know, Mexican, Chicana, Raza, Guatemalan, Salvadorian, etc. Like we're a people, and I think, or Dene, right, or Lakota, like we are a people. We're all relatives in this, and I think that we need to start thinking in a more unifying, um, solidarity way about how we're going to, as a people, um, going to take the land back, going to take our education back for our next generations, and so many other things. I also respect that some people are going to be more connected to like the spiritual traditional elements of what this means, and some people are going to, I saw in the comments earlier, like talking about trades, not everybody's for that, you know. Some people are going to be like they're historians, the artists, the muralists, the like all these beautiful things that we can do, right, that we can build, that we can create. We can't all do it all. I always say, like, for me, like obviously my gift has been as an educator. I love being with the youth. I love teaching. I love learning so that I can teach. But you know, like all of us have our different ways in this. As long as we do it with this idea that we're doing it as a movement for our people, our you know, so that we can have these next generations that are in love with themselves and love with their people. So you could look at your sibling, your relative, and see in them something beautiful, regardless of what this other toxic colonizer, oppressor label has given, right? I don't know. I think it's possible. I think we could do it. I think that's how we need to start thinking of this regeneration of this movement, is really in that way, because otherwise, you know, it's just it's not good. There's going to be a lot more trauma being inflicted on our people, the trauma that we carry in ourselves, that then we horizontally inflict on one another, on our families, and our neighbors, and our communities. And I think we have so much more to give ourselves and our people, and that's what I definitely see in this movement. And the movement is not dead; it never was dead. It just was not as awake as it should be. And I think a lot of that is because we forgot that we really, really, really need to think about that next 7 generations. We have to keep that in the forefront, because when you think not just of myself and these people I can see right here, but the next generations, you're going to act in a way that is better, because you're trying to leave something better for these next generations. And of course, looking at the wisdom, looking at the 7 generations before us and all that they have to give us, like the answers are all there, right? And yeah.
Cool. Thank
Yeah.
you, Yvette. Oh, and also too, a quick reminder to the people watching, the viewers, and everything. There's a lot of, questions coming in, and some of them, like, they're all great questions, but if we could try to focus it, on questions regarding, I guess, as of Chicano identity, and in this section, obviously, we're talking about a lot of common notions, or false things that are being promoted about Chicano identity, culture, and movement. So yeah, and again, too, towards the end, we'll do more Q&As, but yeah. So go ahead, Yvette, and then we'll circle back to Ernesto after that.
Well, I think the answer lies in the word itself. It's a Chicano movement, um, not not something of the past. I do believe that, like everything else, it's gonna evolve. So even to think of the Chicano movement today in terms of what it was like in the 60s, it's kind of like the same romanticized idea of decolonization, right? Going back like to the 1500s before the Europeans arrived. We can think of the Chicano movement just in the context of the 1960s, because then we're erasing the Chicano movement today, which is still very much alive. It's still going on. It's still a form of resistance. And again, the environment is not that much different than what it was at the time. So I don't think it's a thing of the past. I think there's been past mistakes by certain individuals, like everybody, because we're only human beings. Um, and I do believe that a lot of this misconception comes from the colonized interpretation, that things are either good or bad, evil versus good, and just trying to classify things into a box, when even our teachings, our philosophies tell us there's duality, but it's complex. So it's not just either or; it's everything in between. And in that in between, that's where we can find lessons to take them with us as we continue to move, right? As we continue to evolve, as we continue to adapt. because the truth is that we're about to enter a phase of survival again. And we need to hold on to those teachings and learn from those mistakes because, like Lupe was sharing with us, we need to think about the 7 generations. But what does that mean, right? Like it begins within yourself and your connection to the land. And indigenous people are going to love and interact with the land itself regardless of where you go. And that's how we can see like exactly how you perceive yourself, your place in the world, your relationship to the land and the people around you, the energies, the cosmos, and everything else. um, and the Chicano movement is rooted in those teachings. Am I it perfect? No, it's not. Who is any of us perfect? Come on, like it's romanticized, it's colonial, um, and it's kind of again diluting the true essence of the Chicano movement, what it's intended for, and what it's actually achieved uh, in this past decades. Like, come on.
Oh, definitely. Thank you. So Ernesto, circle back, and also I want to just kind of just I saw this good question too, and it might be kind of going back a little bit, but and obviously to address the question about like Chicanos being a thing of the past or whatever, or Chicano movement being a thing of the past, but also a question I guess reverting back to the identity aspect is what are your views on I can't my Spanish is bad mestizaje, right? Mestizo to me that's saying like mestizo identity, right? Which I don't really care for, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Sister Yvette brought up a good point. But I mean, it's the Chicano movement. It was harmed. We were we were attacked. There was a war against like physical war. Armed the state. Used violence against the Chicano movement. Within my own family, I get yes, being members of the Partido or La Raza Unida. You had spies. You had one spy that went as far as becoming my tio's good friend, and he went to my tia's wedding. There was agents that harassed my grandfather and other people because they were registered in the partido. And so I could just imagine what happened to other people that were Raza Unida, registered Raza Unida, and we don't know them personally. And then there was also people whose lives were ended, in the Raza Unida. Like Ricardo Falcon in New Mexico. He was from Colorado, but he was murdered in New Mexico. And other people, right? So there was a outright, assault against the Chicano movement that debilitated it. And then there was a lot of, fear put into the people in general, and then there was a lot of activists that were bought out. I should say they were bought out, man. But like the saying says, where there is oppression, there is resistance, and my entire experience growing up has been the Chicano movement, and whether it was as strong as it was in the 60s and 70s, or not, it existed and it has existed, verdad, and it's still here, verdad. The work that you all do, verdad, compañera Lupe, with Unión del Barrio, myself with the Partido, that's Chicano people struggling to emancipate themselves from whatever conditions we're put in, verdad. So that's part of the movement, verdad. And part of the challenge today that we didn't have as much back then is, you know, uh, one, that we have millions of more people, and two, that I think the state, the colonizer, has seen. I mean, imagine, think about it. Back when there was only 8 million of us, we moved. We put the colonizer in fear. They were in fear of the Chicano movement, and there was only 8 million of us. Today, there's well, like some estimates, over 50 million, over 40 million of our people, verdad, raza, indigenous people, and just that's not including people, Central America, people from the tribes, just Mexican descent people. Over 40 or 50 million, but or near 50 million. That's a lot of people, but they've made all. I mean, the politicians, I'm looking Trump. They all, have made a point to show how us as a people, verdad, we have. So, for example, what I'm trying to say is this: there was a report, or there was this paper put out years ago by Samuel Huntington called the Hispanic Challenge, ¿verdad? And this was like Samuel Huntington guy was a think tank guy. He worked in politics. He was in the White House, ¿verdad? He worked for the Johnson administration. So he wasn't like a whatever guy. He was like a political scientist for the colonizer, for the ruling class of the United States. He
Right.
wrote that paper, the Hispanic Challenge, where he says, how Mexicans and Mexican Americans are unlike other groups in the United States because they have a claim to the land and they proudly claim that land, ¿verdad? And he says how we are basically a problem to the United States that needs to be dealt with. He says that, right? And that's not a Chicano.
Oh, okay. I thought that wasn't that Netanyahu, or didn't Netanyahu recite that recently or something?
Separately, it was Netanyahu who wrote a book in the 90s sometime called Israel in the World of Nations, something like that. And in there, yeah, he says that as well. He says that if Palestinians are able to achieve, independence, that would inspire Hispanics in the United States to have another Mexico. So the people in power, they know the power that we potentially have. And then there was that other report. It hasn't even been reported on as much in the mainstream, but I keep hearing people bring it out little by little. But this report that was done by I forgot this institute what they're called that, but they basically reported how they did it in 2019 and they did it again in last year, where U.S. Latinos, our GDP in the United States was the second fastest growing in 2023, just right behind, I believe it was either China or India. And this paper itself, which is again not a Chicano movement paper, not a leftist, anything, nothing like that, uh, the report, it says if U.S. Latinos were their own country, they're saying that their own country, their own nation, they would be the fifth largest economy on earth. So they know the power that we have. So the state, has done what it can to confuse us. I mean, that's why so much raza, so much Chicanos are confused, and our movement has been debilitated because of that. But regardless of that, we have continued to organize. I think there is an upswing in organizing within the past few years. I think the what's occurred recently, with the election of this clown, ¿verdad? Who's more organized this time around, is going to cause a lot more growth in our struggle and whatever organizations are in our nation, the Chicano nation, ¿verdad? But the Chicano movement dead? No, it's not dead. It's been severely injured. Yes, it's been on a life support, maybe some parts, yes, but it's alive. It is alive, and there is, of course, hope because that's the main thing we have is hope.
Thank you. And what I just want to kind of maybe Yvette can maybe touch on this or start with this, but like kind of going back to what you just said, like as far as it might be on life support or whatever, but like and it's coming back, it's starting to resurge in some ways, like maybe kind of just some quick little understandings of how you see it resurging, or the new forms it's taking, and maybe some of the things it's left behind or it's re-emphasizing this time around, and it's in through your perception of its resurgence. So we'll start with Yvette.
I the last few months have been just incredible and so interesting to me, because we have a new generation that grew up in a different world, and they grew up in the middle of a pandemic, and suddenly their world was just flipped upside down, and there's a lot of changes, not only in society or politically, but also in their own development and how they see life and the world, and they're hungry. These kids are so hungry for knowledge, guidance. Definitely there's guidance, and sadly the main resource that they have to kind of find themselves has been social media. And social media right now is it's replicating all the societal issues that we've been fighting against, right? The behaviors that we are trying to dismantle and heal from all the violence and the imposed, again, identities and, everything that has been imposed through violence and force. um, it's being replicated on social media right now, to the point that, it's easier to find a scapegoat, whether it's a person, a nation, an entire country. And these kids kind of like don't know how to filter through that, right? So the minute that they get exposed to a little bit of teachings or culture, there is something that awakens in them. And I think the scariest part is, as I've told my own children, the enemy, the oppressor, sometimes seems like they know better who we are than ourselves. And that's why they fear so much what we can do. But these kids, they're hungry, they're ready. They're just kind of waiting for the adults to take the lead, and kind of, I love to learn from them personally. They're teaching me a lot more than I can teach them. But in sense of like guidance and sharing knowledge, it's definitely here. These kids are ready, they're hungry, and truthfully they need it. And that's where I find hope, that when I share with them a little bit of the movement and why things became the way they are and what we can do to change it. And yeah, it is definitely here. It is.
Right on. Thank you. And Ernesto, as far as I forgot what I was gonna ask you. Um oh, I remember. Okay, cuz and I guess we brought up the topic of mestizo identity, but we'll address that a little bit later. But I wanted to, and it wasn't meant to be the scope of or the topic of this particular panel, but I know Aztlan. I think the term, obviously that's lot of controversy, the term, but we're not gonna go too deep into that. But I really, because I wrote this article a while back, and that was from my misunderstanding of Aztlan and how I was seeing it, interpreted, right? Not that it was colonial per se, but that like the way that some people used it, it was, what I mean. But not to address that particular angle of it, but more you one of your presentations, you made a good analogy and example of Aslan and Palestine, and I thought that was a really good analogy that helped me really kind of, oh, okay, like, further grasp it, so if you could just do like a quick little overview on clarifying Aslan as you described it in that Palestine example, and just maybe other little notes you think um might clarify some of the popular misconceptions or notions about Aslan. But we'll definitely do another podcast on that particular later.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, it's going into history with that, and understanding history with that is the how not everything is permanent, not everything is forever. One thing, like that song, one thing leads to another. But that is the and so when we see how all these other nations around the world have come to be, verdad? Yes, they have come about to be through colonialism, verdad? But in all these nations, like in Palestine, for example, and I think and we could go with Vietnam también, all these countries in throughout Africa, throughout Asia that were colonized, and they fought for their independence. Those borders that you see there, they are colonial. But does that negate that the people there are a legitimate people? No, and we could see that with Palestine. So for example, this is the thing. What the colonizers, they'll say certain things that are true to their advantage, but to hide everything else. So you'll hear like a Zionist say, "Oh, there was no country called Palestine before." There was no country called Palestine before. There was, an area that they called, Palestine, historic Palestine, but there wasn't like an actual country. And then as when there was the Ottoman Empire and all that, and eventually like they couldn't decide, what are we gonna name this piece of land here? Was it gonna be part of Syria, Lebanon, et cetera? And they could, but they carved it up, and and the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and now all Palestinians, but they recognize, because the PLO, they have a charter, right? The PLO is like this organization that developed the first organization that developed to resist the Zionist occupation, and and it was like a front, like a of different groups. So there was different groups within the PLO, verdad? PFLP, the Palestinian Socialist Party, all these different groups, verdad? Um, but they came to the agreement that they were like, well, this land mass that was carved out by the Balfour Declaration, verdad, by Britain, by these colonizers, that is Palestine. We accept that as Palestine. Yes, they are colonial borders, but within that landmass, a legitimate people have developed. Those are Palestinian people, you know. And it's the same thing with Vietnam. Like, there was no Vietnam before, verdad? And the colonizers, the French in particular, they went there. They colonized that whole area. They even used to call it French Indochina, verdad? And then those people started saying, "Well, we're there's this just like what we're talking about now with Chicano. There's we're from different indigenous groups of this area, verdad? I don't know their names, verdad? But we're all from but there's this whole experience that brings us together as Vietnamese, and then they named that area that they carved out, they named it Vietnam. And then there was all the other countries, también, Laos, Cambodia. Those countries did not exist before. Yes, they are based on colonial lines, but does that negate that the people there are not legitimate? Only a colonizer would say, no, they're not. So why does that change internally in the United States? We're still on planet Earth. We're still human beings, and the same history that the same humans that have created history exist here as well. And the United States is not like uh like it doesn't exist literally inside of a bubble that history does not touch it. It's subject to the same forces as the rest of humanity. So you have a piece of land, that yeah, it was carved out by first Spanish colonialism. I would argue that there's like other realities prior to that that makes what we call today the Southwest unique culturally, but even pre invasion. I think there is a connection there that would have developed to become something else if the colonizer had not arrived here. But they did, and those realities are what let the Spaniards invade this area too, because there was connections from here to Mesoamerica, like economic, cultural, religious, spiritual connections. Yeah, there's whole studies on that, that you can find out, brother. So it is based. I mean, it's based on that. That it was carved out by the Spaniards, and then there was Mexican independence and all that. But does that mean that the people that developed there as Chicanos are not legitimate? Only a racist, only a colonizer, or someone that's so ignorant that they would say stuff like Chicanos are this and that would repeat those lies, and strangely enough, social media, like the sister said, ¿verdad? Has made a lot of Chicanos say that about their own people, but
That's
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, thanks. That's a good overview too. And again, too, like I think that deserves its own episode panel for sure. I don't know if you said you want to just throw in there real quick, Yvette. If not, that's cool.
Um, Well, I've kind of had my own conflict with the whole Aztlan. I remember Dr. Simply one time shared with me in Arizona that it kind of sparked this whole debate between now some of them being elders. But as Chicanos and people from, I believe, the Hana Odom people from the land about this whole thing of Aztlan. Like who it belongs to kind of thing. And out of those conversations came something beautiful, though. They came together. There was a lot of healing that came out of those conversations. And I sometimes I wonder if it has to do again with the diluting of what it was actually intended for, or the origin of the meaning. Because as long as I understand, it's more than just being attached to a geography. It's the place of origin, right? It's it can be more than just a myth. I don't think it's fair to say that it was a myth, that it didn't exist. I think it's a whole concept based on a philosophy, based on Aztlan, I think it's more than just the word attached to a place or the philosophy. It's also the feeling. Now what we have words that are meant to describe entire concepts that translation does not honor. There's no translating, and I kind of feel Aztlan is one of those words. Now, it's not just the place of origin based on geography. It's the way of life, the story behind it. The again, not either or, but everything in between. So, Aslan can be in your mind, it can be in your heart, it can be with your relationship with the land. It's more than just the word itself. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, like I said too, that's a whole nother you know, thorough, comprehensive topic, but I just want to make sure we kind of cover that because that's that, a lot of times the misconceptions or the disparaging understanding of Chicanismo, a lot of times, that they use both the term Chicano, the identity, and the term Aztlan like kind of interchangeably and all that too. So I want to kind of just make sure we got that out the way. But we'll definitely do an episode on that too. So just real quick question: how are you guys doing on time? I'm thinking we probably have another like 20 minutes or so. You guys are good. Cool. Sounds good. Okay, so but just I mean, these are just some questions, some notions that I picked up on and I made note of, right? So I don't know if anybody in the comments or you guys from the panel, if there's any, particular false notions or common, misconceptions or disinformation that you've kind of come across that you kind of want to clarify and touch on. Start with Ernesto. Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, I think in general, everything we've been talking about, ¿verdad? How a lot of all these ideas, these concepts, these historical events, and all that. They're always misconstrued and all that, and that's on purpose. And it's also a result, of us not learning about ourselves in the schools. And so I mean, I always tell people that whenever like I'm at some Chicano study something, but I tell them, look, I mean, you to learn about yourself and to learn about the land that you're on, because Chicano history is about this part of the world, and it's about a group of indigenous people in this part of the world. And I tell them to learn about that. For the most part, you have to be an adult to learn about that, about the land that you're walking on. That's that's offensive. And like I have a daughter, right? She's 17 now, but she was going to this school, a charter school here in Pacoima, and they really, I mean, it's all Chicanos there, but and a few Africans, but mostly Chicano, Raza, indigenous youngsters, and they make this big effort at having the students learn Chinese. There's nothing wrong with learning Chinese. I mean, that's great, but why are you gonna be in a school right in the barrio and you're not gonna teach them about being proud of being Chicano, the very least about Mexicano. You're not going to teach them about proud of being indigenous or the indigenous people uh, original aquí, ¿verdad? Right here. You're not going to teach them about any of that, and you're not gonna teach them Spanish because yeah, I mean we're forced by the Spaniards to speak Spanish, but that's the language that we now speak for the most part, our people. But then that's the ones our parents or a lot of our parents speak, and a lot of people in our community speak. If you're gonna learn any language other than already learning English, you should learn Spanish, and the schools should teach that. But they're not. And so So I was telling my daughter that I mean she understands it, right? But I was telling her, I mean, think about that, and think about how again if you want to learn about yourself and the land that you're on, most likely you're gonna learn it when you're an adult already, and if you choose to, because I mean by that time a lot of people, I mean they're already if they're in school or whatever, they already have their goals, right? They're not going to be like, oh, I want to take this extra class over here, which it shouldn't be an extra class. It should be something you learn day one when you're in kindergarten, as the but of course you're not going to learn that because again, let's not forget that we are under occupation. The United States is a colonizer. They are a colonizer. They do not allow us as a people to develop independently and determine our own destiny. That's the fight. That's why we're
Yeah.
having the conversation.
Quick question. Just I'd like I guess just for thought and consideration. How you mentioned about teaching Spanish in the schools, right? Like, under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, like, is it possible or plausible that we can try to, organize and push something about the treaties to pursue that standard in schools that have, let's say a, predominant or strong, Spanish speaking population?
Yeah, I mean, I think the legal argument could, yeah, that's literally there. I mean, the treaty says that, ¿verdad? That people were supposedly going to be able to hold on to their culture and all that, ¿verdad? And obviously that's not true, ¿verdad? Pero that legally, yeah. I mean, I think there has been people that have made that argument, but I don't know how successful that has been. Uh, and I don't think we should we can totally rely on the legal system, but yeah, I think legally it could be an argument, you know.
Yeah, no, I just kind of throw the, the food for thought out there, because I know we have a lot of up and coming professionals, lawyers, and whatever, and like there's a lot of things that could be challenged. There's so many fronts, so just kind of like throw ideas out there to some of the people who might be listening or future viewers of this panel. But Yvette, like, is there anything else that you can think of that like common notions, misconceptions, disinformation about like Chicanismo that you've kind of come across that you think might need addressed, just kind of acknowledging?
Uh, I think it goes back to the same thing, the same basis, that there is a socio-political, spiritual movement. It's not just one or the other. The Chicano movement it covers like all these aspects of our life. And I think in the mainstream conversation, we're not taking into consideration the spiritual part of it and what it's done for our people, not only preserving certain teachings in a time where Mexico was erasing them through mestizaje, um, but also, uh, it's preserved them, and it's obviously it's going to evolve with time, like everything, even the land itself. But to exclude the spiritual part of it, uh, and the contributions that it's done for the healing of our people, I think it's a big dishonor, because then it just becomes this black and white issue, right? It's either or, and it's more than that. It's a whole experience, but it's not only defined in the 60s, and it has like a before and after, and a future, and in a present. Like, we are going through a shift right now that it's very much inspiring the Chicano movement. um yeah, just that, it's more complex. Just like we are made out of different cultures and different backgrounds, different indigenous teachings. That's the Chicano movement. It's not just set in stone, black and white. It's not, I don't think it just fits into a label or definition. It's way more than that. Oh, you're muted, Mike.
Sorry, yeah, no, thank you. Um, another thing I wanted to, I guess, another area of Chicano identity, culture, and all that is maybe like a brief overview, concise overview of like Chicano accomplishments, right? Like even I didn't know this, I mean, me like who studies a lot or whatever, I didn't know this too, but I was watching brother Kule Tlapoyawa with the Tales from Atlantis podcast. Shout out to those brothers over there. Um, and I didn't know, how much the Chicanos influence the I guess the resurgence, or like they breathe a lot of life into the Dia de los Muertos celebration, over here, and then I guess over Mexico, kind of just it made it cooler or whatever. It's give a good B shot in the arm or whatever the case was, But maybe kind of just touch on that real quick, and maybe just other kind of brief accomplishments that people might not realize are of Chicano origin, or benefits that they might have now that originate from the Chicano movement, to have like a really important of like what they're defending, what how much they need to respect Chicano movement and Chicano identity and what it stands for.
I mean, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would say every single aspect of humanity that we have in this country, as Chicanos, as raza, or I don't really say ever Latinos, but that um, stems from the Chicano movement. And obviously, on the East Coast from the Boricua sisters and brothers también over there, ¿verdad? But in this part of the world, again, I mean, every single thing. I mean, from being able to go to college and university and all that, from not having to be stooped over. I mean, the raza is still out there in the fields, but that there's a better chance that some people can make it out of there and have an education or a better paying job, etc. That's because the Chicano movement, and it's not like special people. It was people just like them, regular everyday people that united in organizations and formed what is today called the Chicano movement, that fought and struggled so that we could have some aspect of humanity. And that's the only reason we have any of this, ¿verdad? If the desegregation and all those things, and again opening up the colleges and universities and all that to Chicanos, even though it's still been a challenge past that initial stage, but that's because of the Chicano movement, ¿verdad? I mean, that's directly because of that. The fact that I mean, even though they sometimes it's just covering, but that there's more uh, rules or laws that protect us from outright police murder or brutality, even though it obviously still happens. And I think the sister, she studies this. We're probably the biggest group that this happens to, and I was surprised when I learned that. Pero este, we have those things because of the Chicano movement. It wouldn't exist otherwise. Like for example, locally here in the San Fernando Valley, the Northeast San Fernando Valley, which has historically been Chicano, Mexicano, indigenous, ¿verdad? Where we could live, right? I mean, all of it has been indigenous, ¿verdad? But where we have the longest communities. Um, you have, like, for example, Los Angeles Mission College, which is like the newest college out of the LACCD colleges, ¿verdad? And that college is literally there because of La Raza Unida Party. They never tell you that, but there's one building there, even named the Guadalupe Ramirez building. Guadalupe Ramirez was era como una abuelita. She was like a grandmother to me, right? And she was a member of La Raza Unida Party. And she was originally from Texas, and she belonged to La Raza Unida over there. And then she came over here, and she continued participating. She was the person, as a Raza Unida member, that organized the committee to fight to bring the Mission College over here to the Northeast Valley, because we didn't have anything. I mean, it was like a lot of barrios, and connecting to what we're talking about right now. Back then, even me growing up, 80s, 90s, it was like this part of the valley was like a whole other country. If you went to the other part of the valley, Encino and Sherman Oaks and Calabasas, I mean, that's all like, whoa, why the hell would I ever be over there, unless I was like cleaning some white person's house or something, or their garden or whatever. But but it's been like it's literally was like that. It's like a whole other country, so they would treat us that way. And like CSUN is over there in Northridge, and then you had Pierce College over there in that over there in the other side. Valley College, kind of a little in the middle, but still not in the barrio area. Este, and so people fought to have Los Angeles Mission College. They wanted to have it in Barrio San Fernando. It was unsuccessful to have it built there. They wanted to have it in Pacoima también, which is right next, the two barrios, Pacoima right here. There's an airport here called White Man Airport, which none of the Raza has airplanes there. I mean, maybe some, but it's all like white people. I mean, how offensive it is, mostly white people that go there. A lot of Trump supporters right in the barrio, and they have their airport. And so one of the things people wanted was build the college there. It's like a big old space right there. Build a college there. They were unsuccessful at that. Finally, they got it to be built in Silmar, which at that point was still a lot of white people. Now it's mostly all raza, and they took a portion of a park, like Carrizo Park, which is a very big park. They took a portion of it and started building Mission College. But that's only because of the efforts of La Raza Unida Party, and the Chicano, Mexicano people, La Raza, that organized to fight for that. If it wasn't for that, there would be no Mission College. At least here, it'd be like far off in the other side of the valley. So there's stuff like that, and there's other little things, that I have, I guess, like the privilege to say that I know about that other people don't know about. But you have like all these other nonprofits that came out of the Chicano movement. Not enough people know about that. You have like the Northeast Valley Health Corporation, which have these little clinics all over the place. The Raza Unida was a part of that effort initially. You have like Proyecto del Barrio, which came out of the barrio. One brother, my dad knew him. He was a tecato in Barrio Sanfer, and he came out of that lifestyle and he started organizing and trying to help other Chicano and Chicana sisters and brothers in that lifestyle to get them out of that, and that was the Chicano movement, man. All these things that have brought some benefit to our people has been because we fought for it. Because we fought for it, nothing was given to us, So, and that's one of the crimes when you think about it, like that Chicano history is not taught to us, whether it's a general or specific to the area. It's not taught to us. That's a crime, man. That's such a crime to our people because they don't then they make us ignorant on purpose, and then you have social media which makes that like extremely easy, and then you have a lot of people come out with like extremely wrong ideas that came out of other wrong ideas, and it thwarts any progress that we could have, and they think they're making progress with these crazy ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
No, appreciate it. No, thank you. And that's a good overview too. And like I think that could be a total episode too. Kind of just listing things and kind of showing background. How about you, Yvette? I'm sure you come from a different different front and different angle with a lot of things. But what are some of your understandings of the question?
I think Ernesto just gave us a good insight, but in simple words, the rights that I enjoy today to express myself, to be able to record the police, to even rally my people to say, you know what, this is not fair. We gotta do something. Let's at least like gather and see what we come up with. All of those basic fundamental rights were gained through the struggle of obviously Black people, Indigenous people, Chicanos, the labor rights, and every, like Ernesto said, everything that we have today wasn't just given out of the goodness of their heart. It's been fought for. And it seems like we make small progress and everything's at stake again, including citizenship for a lot of people, right? So, um, yeah, but that's a little bit of what we have today. So any ground that we have right now to be able to organize and fight has been uh, also a contribution of the Chicano movement.
And how about like any kind of immigration dynamics or immigration policies or laws that have been affected by the Chicano movement or inspired or what have you? Any you could think of?
I
Or
Not like in specific, anything that I can tell you in specific, like with this law and this time, but just in general. For instance, let's think about the most recent time that we had kids in cages and we organized. Well, it wasn't just like brown people, right? Like there was a structure provided by the Chicano movement because it was just people coming together. It's not like anybody had like any actual expertise in organizing and mobilizing people, which is so hard to do. And thanks to that structure, again, perfect, of course it's not, none of this is, none of us are perfect, but it's given us a good foundation, a good structure, to at least have like some sort of guidance and see how we can implement that to today. But I think that's been the same throughout the years. And, just to kind of give a parenthesis, I want to acknowledge there's been anti-immigrant sentiment within our community too. And I've experienced that myself. But I think it comes from people that have a diluted perspective of Chicano, that are not really connected with the ideology, philosophy, the way of life, uh, more like the self-identified mestizos or Latinos or Mexican Americans, because
Mhm.
those things have a place and they matter. The
Right,
language, how we identify matters. So I
definitely.
do want to acknowledge that. I know there's been that struggle. I've experienced that myself, from a lot of people that have the privilege to have their American citizenship.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, we've got some ground to be able to fight back thanks to the consequences of the Chicano movement.
right on. Thank you. Um, and I guess just I guess on that note, just because it's in my mind right now, but and it's obviously it's a not to go into it too much, but like if there's a quick message you can send to Chicanos, Chicano Trump supporters or so-called Chicanos who or Latinos for Trump, like a quick, 1 minute, message to them real quick, since we're kind of on the topic of, anti-immigrant sentiments and things of vendido coconut nature. Start with Yvette. Go ahead, since you're already on it.
I
I know
I
it's kind
really
of
struggle.
weird.
Yeah, I kind of struggle with this because again, I've spent more than half of my life in this country and seeing things from my perspective. It kind of seems like, pero why? O sea, qué chingados, what the hell it's going on in here and here? Like, is the disconnect so deep? Is the sense of belonging that, like, are you that desperate to belong, to be property of the colonial system? Um, it's sad. More than anything, it's really sad. It's really, really sad
Mm,
uh, to see how far divided we are, and at the same time, like, you guys are missing out. You have no idea the beauty, the just the amount of knowledge, the beauty, yeah, there's a lot of sadness too, a lot of grieving, but our cultures are just so amazing. They have everything we need, and I just wish they spent more time getting to know themselves and their roots than trying to fit into this system.
cool, thank you. So Ernesto, like a quick message to Trump, whatever, Chicanos for Trump or whatever.
Oh, I don't even put those two words together, man.
Right? Yeah, I feel kind of sacrilege even doing that. That's what I was.
Look, I'll say to both Trumpster. I mean, come on, guys. But to both. I think, well, to again, okay, to both. It's just like so much in my mind when that comes on. I was like, oh my god. I mean, come on, man. Like, you really think you're gonna be accepted? And you're not gonna be accepted. But we have to understand that we as a people, ¿verdad? We can think for ourselves. We have the capacity to think for ourselves, and we have to organize for ourselves. So if a Chicano or Raza, indigenous person can support either of the two imperialist colonizer parties, who at the end of the day represent the same thing, because this, I mean, they play people so easy, but I think that's starting to fall. Like a Republican, a Trumpster, Trump will say he wants something to do something, and at the end of the day, the Democrats do it. And then a Trumpster will tell you, well, for example, Obama started this. Okay, you're right. Does that mean you support Obama? Why are you even saying that? For like the kids in cages, or even the wall. Bill Clinton signed Operation Gatekeeper years ago, and that extended that disgusting wall into the Sonora Desert, right? And on even dividing as the further dividing, as the indigenous lands, and forcing Raza to go through the desert and die. That was Bill Clinton, a Democrat. It was Obama that put the kids in cages originally. There was Kamala Harris that continued doing that with Biden, ¿verdad? And they continued building the wall. So I would just say to both, ¿verdad? If you can support that, then you can support at least something from your own people. And that's where I would emphasize, me individually, join La Raza Unida, or at least join an organization that is fighting for our people, ¿verdad? At least give it some attention. You give it to these other people, to these European Anglos, wherever whatever they say they believe in, ¿verdad? Give some attention to your own people that are trying to organize against the grain so badly. It's not easy to organize, but there are some of us that are doing it. Give it some of that attention, and
Yeah.
you will learn a lot.
Yeah. No. Good. Yeah. It's great. Yeah. Um. So what would like we're starting to kind of get towards the end too. I know, but I know it's a good topic. So here's a couple of closing questions to kind of like guide the dialogue. But what do you feel are some of the biggest threats to Chicano identity and culture today? As well as maybe some of the reasons and agents behind the undermine of Chicano identity. So we'll start with Yvette.
I might sound a little hyperbolic with this, but I really think this is a fight for our survival once again, our entire existence. Um, from where I stand, I see this like being the last attempt to a full-blown genocide against the first people of the Americas, Turtle Island or Semanawa, Kanawak. Um, and that's really concerning because it's not even just about being Chicano, right? That might be under the umbrella that we come together to organize, again, socio-politically. But this is more than that. These people in power are really afraid of the decimation of um, their race, their made up race, right? And the way they look at us, it's not even by how we identify. It's literally our phenotype that's targeted. That's the one thing that it's being racialized, criminalized, demonized. Um, so I think that we are at a point that it's about the entire existence, um, as we know it. Um, so again, I know it might sound hyperbolic, but I hope the lessons that have been that just kind of blew up on our face in the last year should be alarming enough for everybody because we know the inspiration for a lot of these crimes came from here, from the historic treatment of indigenous people in this country. And yeah, it's more than just our rights, our identity, our freedom. It's literally like our future and existence.
Thank you. And we'll go Ernesto too, but just gonna throw a couple of thoughts out. Just I'm trying to stay in the role of host over here because I got a lot to say too, but I might do something separate. But some things that come to mind for me are like Latinx identity. Again, trying to connect it from the Chicano identity to Latinized to however they can move us towards whiteness, right? As well as well, I guess mainly that. And I think going back to the understanding that, like you mentioned, with the GDP and knowing our power, knowing our numbers, and it's been said for the last couple of decades how our population is growing. So I really do feel there's a target, a definite target to keep us disorganized and keep us away from our indigenous identity for sure. So again, but I think Latinx is probably the biggest probably I mean, at least one of the biggest things for me I see, because like again, words are power, names are power, and what have you. So just kind of or MEPA, and then I guess whatever they change the new name to, whatever. So things like that too. There's not not to say there's not valid critiques again too, but then kind of like disparaging and things that like dilute the actual fight again too. I think a lot of it comes down to a lack of knowledge of what the fight's really about. In this case, really understanding white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, and how it morphs in different scenarios, right? And I think people across the board, as far as Chicano, Native, Black activists as well. Too, a lot of times I see that a lot of people have forgotten that that critique of white supremacy and capitalism. But anyway, just want to throw that in there real quick. Ernesto, go ahead.
Yeah,
The biggest threats. Yeah.
the biggest threats. I mean, well, I think we have to put things into context with that, and so the United States is at a point in history, right, where its dominance is waning. It has been waning, for the past few decades. Its influence throughout the world has been waning, and internally, its Anglo Euro American settler population has begun to wane as well, and they know this. They know this, and they know that challenges their complete existence. Um, so the United States, as an empire that it is, has to naturally, out of their own will to survive, find ways to survive. Part of it is doing what they're doing around the world today. I mean, that's part of who they are, but they have continued to do it, even though they're being challenged by other countries throughout the world now, without that more than before. ¿Verdad? That in countries in quote unquote Latino America, ¿verdad? Venezuela, Bolivia, obviously Cuba for the longest, and all these other countries that have started, in the past 20 years saying, no, we're not going to follow you. No way. And we don't care what you threaten us with. We're following our own path. China, Russia, countries now in Africa as well that are starting to reassert their independence as African countries, ¿verdad? And saying we're not going to follow the United States, and we're you have all these countries, taking a stand, and in the quote unquote Middle East, and we see it more specifically with the Palestinians who've been under occupation for a long time, but they're finally been like, that's it, man. Like we're just gonna go for it, you know. And they have heroically been doing that. I mean, for 70 plus years, right? But more openly now, ¿verdad? And you're seeing a lot of countries that's shaking that dominance the United States has had in that part of the world as well. Where this made up mini USA that they built over there, because that's what Israel is. It's a made up country, a made up quote unquote nation. It's fake. But they've held it, like they just thrown money at it, thrown money, so much money at it, and they've thought that's been safe for the longest. No, but they can't maintain that forever, and it's waning, ¿verdad? Israel is falling apart internally as well, as we see. And the only thing that they can, and I don't want to go on other topics, but just to make the connections with that, the only thing that they could claim, they want to make it claim like they're winning this conflict, and they're not. They're losing it. The only thing they do is that they have all these weapons that they can massacre hundreds of people like that, But on the front, they are falling. They can't fight the resistance. The resistance is smashing them with that. But anyway, so that's happening throughout the world, and the United States sees that, and they see again internally that it's not the white picket fence Gabacho USA that they thought they had for the longest. You have the people that they thought they had gotten rid of, or at least contained to the res and to the barrios. They've seen those barrios grow enormously. Why? Because, well, first of all, they are here on our land, occupying it, and two, they've needed laborers. They've needed more workers in this land. So they've criminalized the migrant, but they've needed the migration of more raza to come here and work the field, work the cities, and all that. And while that's happened, you've had our community just boom and grow. So they see all this stuff, right? They see all that, and this goes back to like we were talking about earlier with Samuel Huntington and then Netanyahu and all that. So they, out of their existence internally, so if they don't fall apart and they could do all the stuff that they do to maintain in power, they have to confuse the group of people that can, if organized and conscious of who they are, we are an existential threat to the United States. So they are going to confuse us. They are going on purpose confuse us and confuse us to the max. Where I mean, you have nowadays, you have a lot of young people, also older people, but you have a lot of people, and not a lot, right? Online and activist type of people, because the community isn't really saying all of this garbage, right? But you have a lot of people saying stuff that 20 years ago was being said by outright right-wing racist Europeans. Aztlan is this, Chicanos are that. Verbatim, they are repeating a lot of that garbage, but they think they're being progressive. They think they're being revolutionary. They think they're being, communist, which to me is like, it's silly. You're not being any of those things, so they on purpose, they instigate that. I mean, that's their job to instigate that. And I could tell you, at least from when a lot of that MEPA stuff started coming out, and they were thrashing, Chicanismo. They were thrashing Mecha. They were thrashing all these ideas that came from the grassroots of our people. We investigated a lot of those people on our own, right? One of those persons was the daughter of a soldier from Central America, and so a soldier from Central America in the 80s was not going to be someone with very nice ideas. This was going to be someone that did stuff that they're doing in Palestine, for example, against those are terrible people with a terrible ideology, horrible ideology that was there to defend not their people, but defend the status quo and the interest of the United States. That was one of those persons. Another person in that whole camp of people was this person had gone to a charter school in Miami, of all places, and this charter school was in part funded by Homeland Security. How did this person end up being the vice chair of Mecha? You know, um, and we there was other people like that. As the one person, Brother Matt, who's part of this whole struggle.
Yeah, and then not to go into that too much, but like, do you think, just real quick, like, if was that coordinated, or that just happened, to fall into place? I know it's just speculation, but like, what do you think?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, at the same time when that was going on, ¿verdad? And it's not to sound all conspiracy or anything like that, but at the same time that was going on, against the Chicano movement, the Chicano liberation struggle, this was like 2018, 2019, when Mecha was going to have their 50th anniversary, which I spoke at. Um, este, at that same time, the social media, which, under like the CIA and this group that our great mayor of Los Angeles was vice chair of, the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, which is known to be a front for the Central Intelligence Agency. They were conducting a lot of work in Venezuela, or against, I should say, in Venezuela, in Bolivia, to organize groups of people and organize social media to just attack Venezuela and attack Bolivia. But they were using the social media and these groups over there to make it seem like they were revolutionary groups, and they would
I
use
remember, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they would
Yeah.
have like videos and show like people fighting the police, and it was catching to at that same time, it was like when the pre George Floyd, but still Black Lives Matter stuff. So people had this in their minds, like, oh, fighting police is a good thing, and in general, it is,
Yeah.
But they were using that whole sentiment, that whole, like, radical revolutionary sentiment, to make people think like, oh, look, people in Nicaragua and Venezuela and Bolivia, they're fighting the police too, so they must be doing something good. And they use that whole aesthetic, and so they use it
Yeah.
the same way. At the very same time, that starts happening over here, where you have social media portraying, like this new wave of Chicanos saying, oh, I'm more revolutionary, or I'm a communist, and this and that, or whatever, because I recognize that Chicanos are horrible people, and they're all these things that I'm telling you, repeat verbatim, things that racists used to say 20 years ago. Chicanos are all this. It's so revolutionary to say that. Mexicans are the worst people on earth. It's so revolutionary to say that, and they're colonizers, and they're this and that. Look at me. Wow, I say these things. I'm so progressive, and they would use all these words,
Yeah.
all these words that like uh, uh, words that are used in the movimiento, ¿verdad? Or now in the academy, like radical, this and that, and whatever. And a lot of people fell for that, just like they did
Yeah.
in Venezuela, just like they did in Bolivia, but obviously, those countries, the people are organized, and they didn't all fall for that
Yeah.
garbage.
Yeah.
That's our challenge.
Actually, no, I mean, and that's a whole nother. That's a real good topic to address. That's like a whole episode too. I think, kind of just really define the ways that, stuff like that.
Mhm.
The manipulation behind the scenes or whatever. So I guess this kind of like the last point that I have so far, or the last thing in the last note. To obviously to kind of leave it off on a kind of constructive, um, a constructive and call to action type of note is and overall I think we've been doing pretty good. We've maintained about a good like 30 something viewers throughout most of this, and just in the last maybe 15 minutes it dropped down a little bit, but that's really good too. It's gonna get a lot of views. I already know it. But And just a quick reminder too, if you haven't already, anybody watching right now or that will be watching this on when they're viewing it, don't forget to like and subscribe on the channel. It helps me out, and we gotta support each other economically as well, and um, just in general too. Again, too, like I put that quote up here. He made a comment about public relations and propaganda and media too. So we gotta support our own media, and that's another point. It's a good segue into this next point, which is what you consider the most or some of the most important imperatives and focuses for Chicano people, obviously Chicano slash indigenous people, Spanish speaking indigenous people, which is that's what it also is. And what are some of the tools and techniques you feel would be useful to accomplish, making ground and those things that we feel are some of the most imperatives, and I'll just throw my quick thought there is just that I think I'm real big on media, and I think media and journalism and our own interests again too with the working knowledge of basic indigeneity, basic Chicanismo, and active critical analysis of white supremacy and capitalism is critical within not just to do it and be a part of these professions, whatever. Yeah, but we need that with the critical white supremacy, analysis of white supremacy and capitalism. But Yvette, start with you.
I guess I'm gonna bring it home a little bit closer to how we get there. Because I think that there's like some sort of moral puri puritarians, that kind of like if it's not my way, it's not the right way kind of thing, forgetting that there's a whole diversity of tactics that are needed. Obviously, we all have our own limitations and we can only do so much based on the tools that we have. And by acknowledging that there's only so much that we can contribute, right? Yeah, I want to share a quote from Netzahualcoyotl that says something like, "If you give your heart to each and everything, you lead it nowhere, and you're gonna lose your heart." So the balance needed for us to be able to um, even arrive to a consensus and the diversity of tactics needed at different levels, capacities, but at the end of the day, we can all contribute something to the movement and moving forward. But that has to be a reflection of, our true identity, our teachings, philosophies, and cosmovision. Um, so just, find the balance and continue to question everything because, yeah, um, yeah,
No, that's
thank you.
cool. No problem. Okay, Ernesto.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the most I could say from experience, and then from learning from history, not just our history, but of the world, that is organize. Organize. We need to organize, and out of that, we'll find out, is the where we could, improve. ¿Verdad? Pero if we're not organizing, ¿verdad? Then the enemy is organizing. They are organized, and they're gonna tell us what we should do, ¿verdad? Which is the where we're at now. So just organize, man. It's that's how people throughout the world, throughout history, in similar situations to ours, have removed themselves from that situation. They have organized. They have built power collectively, and that's what we need to do as well.
That's great. I get just want to emphasize too. Like for a lot of people who don't know some things I do. The six again going back to the Six Sun Writers website, which has been around for like I want to say almost like 13 years now. Crazy, getting old over here. but but yeah, just and a lot of my activism out here. I feel one of the biggest elements and ways I've been able to be successful. I mean, there's a lot of different factors, but one of the key ways is, I went to school for graphic design. I never got my degree in graphic design. I got close, but but then eventually, I learned web design and a little bit of programming, and eventually it all kind of translated, just kind of creative media in general, creative digital media, right? And having my flyers and having my website and be able to like communicate and match up um, a lot of the propaganda that's out there on the net. And I still don't see a lot of quality websites on Chicanismo, very few, or ones that know how to market themselves. So marketing, whether it's for yourself or your business or like, the movement, the market, just understand the marketing, you understand the some dynamics of persuasion and communication, right? And that's really key to whatever we do, whatever aspect of the movement or cultural work or activism work that you're doing. That's a real key element. So I really encourage people to, get familiar with, basic marketing skills, media, basic web design or whatever, and learn how to communicate visually in whatever ways possible. Because again, too, like using my where I'm at as an example, West LA, Venice area, like all the papers here, they're all like at best they're very unhelpful, liberal, wishy-washy, whatever, publications, and at the worst, they're very right-wing, blue MAGA type publications. I call it gentrification media, right? And so there's no real only now people start to kind of do websites and things like that. Again, a little better at it. Um, and so I'll say that like they have all this media, and it's like one of the basic laws of marketing, from what I understand, is like a lot of times people don't accept ideas unless they're introduced to it or it's presented to them at least a handful of times. It's kind of, you can look it up. And so same thing with when we're sharing ideas, and then when you hear things about Chicanismo, negative, whatever, it's going to stay in your head, which I also attribute a lot to why people are, have fell for the Trump juice or whatever, aside from just being not, lack of education, which is by design or whatever too, but also the fact that even like a lot of the media, even the so-called progressive media or so-called left-wing media, which a lot of it's not really, I wouldn't consider it really left. A lot of it is trying to, manipulate us and get them to, uh, extract our power and our agency and into their hands, but it's really important however we can do it. And I'm open to teaching people and kind of putting out pointers as far as making our own media, our own journalism and our interests. But we have to be educated, basics on our culture and our history, and have a working understanding of identifying and countering white supremacy ideology in all its forms, as well as, capitalism, which is, it comes in, it's all attached and lined up. So I just want to throw that in there because I haven't really spoke most of this, and I think that's it. Is there anything else you guys wanted to touch on real quick that you want to address? There's a lot of good questions here, and there's more we could talk about, but it's already 2 hours. Well, like 2 hours and a quarter. But just for whatever quick thoughts you have, as well as any quick information on what your work, some initiatives you guys might be working on right now, and maybe some ways to contact you for further, communication, and so we'll start with Yvette.
Well, you can find me on social media under the same name, Yvette Sochillot. If you Google me, then you can find the link tree, the work on La Raza database.
And I'll put links. Sorry, real quick. To now, whatever you guys say here too, just let me know, and I'll put links in the caption whenever I publish this on YouTube.
Thank you. Yeah, and just keep an eye out for the next couple weeks. There will be, I'm going to start doing trainings on advocacy work, kind of sharing with other people how to do the work of personal advocacy to help people with their, personal cases, whether it's criminal, immigration, medical, education, whatever issue there might be, systemic issue, to kind of support them and help them navigate these problems. And we're also going to start doing Know Your Rights workshops for students, middle school, high school students in English and Spanish, and for the parents, just kind of basics on uh, know your rights, how to interact with the police, what to do, not to do, what to do in case of encountering an immigration officer, how to develop an emergency plan, and just gonna start setting up those structures for our community. There should be around the next couple weeks.
Definitely, that's what's up
Thank
too.
you.
And yeah, and that's what's up. And that, again, on the topic of being organized, that's really key. So thank you. I'll go Ernesto.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just organizing the Partido de la Raza Unida. We have grown a lot in the past 4 years. We've existed since 1970, 71 here in particular, the San Fernando Valley, but we've grown a lot nationally, ¿verdad? So if people want to know more about that work, ¿verdad? You can find us razaunidaparty.org, or social media también, La Raza Unida Party. Yeah, if you want to follow me personally, Ernesto Chicano Ayala.
What's up too? So we'll go and close it out, and then when I end the stream, we could still stay on and kind of just close out between us. But I think that's it. Again, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We've had like a consistent 34 users as far as I can see from here, and this as a heads up too, we're gonna have more of these panels with solid cultural workers, activists, educators. Again, too, I really try to focus on uh people with experience and people with integrity. Again, not to say that anybody's perfect or imperfect or whatever too, but we need to have standards of integrity with who we elevate, because there's up. And I just want to just kind of make a quick note, because there were some visitors we had on the comment sections, some some consistent provocateurs within the community who claim to be indigenous and Chicano, and her very questionable nature. We won't go into that, but just it's important to have integrity. So everyone that I have on here, it's one thing to disagree and have issues with certain, aspects of people's ideology or people's, you know, mistakes or whatever, right? That's valid. But when it comes down to like violence and violence towards women and people who enable and perpetuate that, we're not going to have anybody on here of that nature. So just as a quick note, uh, you know, for people who try to do things a good way, we need to hold a line of integrity and the values and energy and spirits that we allow to be within our spaces. So again, thank you to Ernesto, Yvette, and Lupe. Hope you're having fun at your game over there. And again, look forward to more panels over here on Chicanismo, of course, which is to say indigeneity, Spanish speaking, Mesoamerican diaspora, etc. And again, so thanks a lot for the visitors, and we'll see you later.